We are back on It's Always Game Day in Cincinnati. Lindsay Patterson, Mike Santagata here. I know you're under the weather right now, Mike, but how are you feeling?
Thugging it out. Feel terrible. Feel better now. Last night, I felt like I was gonna die. Like I couldn't sleep and wake up like every hour and a half, and just from like 2 a.m. until 6 a.m. I was like, oh, this is it. I'm going
Yeah.
down. I don't know what I have. Flu. Hopefully not COVID. Could be COVID though. Um, just feel terrible. But I know I picked up the Bengals game because I didn't do anything after that. So 2 out of the last 3 times I've gone and seen the Bengals picked up a
Get
sick.
sick.
Yeah, they won both those games. They lost the game I didn't get sick. So you're welcome. This is a serious sacrifice I've been making.
Mike takes one for the team. He gets sick. He goes to the game. But he is here. He's a trooper. It is off-season mode for the Cincinnati Bengals, and it's kind of funny. We recorded on Sunday evening, and I think we both agreed. Oh, I feel like Lou Anarumo will be
Yeah.
back with the Cincinnati Bengals around 8:30 a.m., 8 a.m. Monday. The insiders all over social media said the Cincinnati Bengals decided to part ways with defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo. Frank Pollock, Marion Hobby, Betcher. They gutted their defensive room, and then obviously moving on from Frank Pollock, which wasn't super surprising, I would say, when you think about over the last couple of years. But just with them going on the 9-8 run, Zac Taylor talked to the media on Monday afternoon and said it was all his decisions. Before we get to some of the candidates, because I know we've talked about that in the past, were you shocked, Mike?
Um. Well, I mean, I guess I have to say I was surprised by Lou, just because we said we didn't think he'd lose his job. That wasn't necessarily we thought that Anarumo deserved to keep his job or whatever. It was more so, at least for me, I feel like the Bengals usually lean towards keeping people versus letting them go. And he did have a good end of the season, other than a little bit in that Broncos game. Other than that, not really surprised by many of those. It was all the very underperforming units that lost the position coach. Um, for whatever it's worth, I mean, to me, I feel like the offensive line just now finally got a piece that could be developed. I did not think any of the guys they drafted were really development pieces. Even when you take Jackson Carman in the second round, apparently Pollock didn't want him, and you have to put in the work. I thought Mims was the first guy they took because Volson, for whatever it's worth, he's a late fourth rounder that's 24 years old when he's drafted from North Dakota State. Old, not that talented, not that athletic. That's not some prospect you're getting that's perfect. And then everybody else is a free agent, and I don't think those free agents played worse when they first got here. I think Kappa does now, but that's probably a lower body injury from 2022. So I have some excuse there in my brain of like, well, I don't know how many offensive line coaches would have gotten a good performance out of the offensive line that they've spent, but at the same time, it's been too long. It's another year of bad offensive line play. Got to move on. Marion Hobby is the one I feel like you had to move on, and I know he's well respected in the NFL, but they've used I think 4 top 100 picks, and all of those guys played at their floor. Maybe 5. I think Osai, he didn't really develop. I mean, maybe you could say he developed a little bit. Murphy, he didn't develop. Zach Carter got cut in year 2, and then Chris Jenkins and McKinley Jackson both playing at about their floor to me. So he had a lot of resources that were spent on young guys for him to develop, and he didn't develop any of them really. And then Betcher, yeah, the linebackers have been underperforming year after year. Who knows if that is the players, but they went from a clear strength on the team to being maybe a weakness on this team, just in terms of watching Jermaine Pratt and Logan Wilson move out there.
I think it was, and obviously, I know a lot of people are pointing towards Zac Taylor, like he should be gone. I truly do believe Zac Taylor is on the hottest of hot seats, and I know how fans feel about him over the last couple of years. Wanted him out of here. They're finishing back-to-back seasons, 9-8. obviously with the performance Joe Burrow had, Jamar Chase, and Trey Hendrickson, it is a failed season when you don't make the playoffs and you struggle. And about 6 of those 8 losses were opportunities to win the game. And there's a lot of different players and even the coaching staff that you can blame for how the season turned out. And I thought that was really telling that they did that. They obviously have a huge offseason ahead when it comes to the extensions. What happens with Trey Hendrickson? What happens with T. Higgins? What happens with Jamar Chase? All of those players, they can begin the negotiation period or resume it, because I know they like to wait until the season's over. So hopefully, as we've mentioned before, that stuff gets taken care of as soon as possible. Obviously, with T is going to have to be sooner than the others because of the franchise tag, and he'll be available free agent in mid-March. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, it was really telling on Monday morning to get that notification. It wasn't just one coach, it was several, 4 coaches they've moved on from. And now the fun part begins when it comes to the names, the interviews. And today, I know there were a few different networks who mentioned that Patrick Graham from Las Vegas, defensive coordinator, DeMarcus Covington from the Patriots are 2 of the names that will be getting interviews. Before we get to other candidates and possible guys on your wish list that we've talked about before, what did you think about those 2 interviews names?
The guy from New England, and I think he just said his name. I'm sick, so I've forgotten immediately. I don't think that's a guy you hire as a defensive coordinator. I don't think you hire Gerard Mayo as a defensive coordinator, to be honest. I'm a little surprised by the amount of people that want him. He took a Patriots defense that was about the 10th best unit in the league and turned them into the worst, one of the bottom 10 units in the league. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's somebody that you give a defensive coordinator job when he's going to have complete reign on the defense. Linebacker coach, very interested in Gerard Mayo. But when it comes to defensive coordinator, I'm not interested in either one of those Patriots guys. Maybe they want that guy as a defensive line coach or something. That you get the interview, you say it's for defensive coordinator. I think they're going for a bigger fish than that. I would think. I do like Patrick Graham. I think that's a good. It's not my absolute favorite, but he has done a good job, I think, both in New York and in Vegas. And neither one of those situations, he had much talent. So this is something I look at where with the Bengals, you're probably not getting a ton of talent on this defense. Just be realistic. That's my one thought with Robert Saleh is he's been awesome when he's had the guys. But when he hasn't had the guys, he has not been awesome. So maybe you can get the guys in there quick. Maybe getting the guys is simply he can get them into the roles he wants them to be and they'll play better or whatever. But I do think that you're going to want somebody for this job that can kind of make lemonade out of lemons and not be able to raise the floor, which is something Lou Anarumo was not able to do for this defense.
Yeah, when it comes to Patrick Graham, just hearing people outside of Vegas talk about him and I know you mentioned it, what he was able to do. I mean, he didn't have, besides Max Crosby, I know, and he did get injured towards the end of the season and he was out for a few games, but he was playing tough quarterbacks. And I think that they were all encouraged and they don't want him to leave Las Vegas, even though they're moving on from their head coach. And normally when that happens, you do clean house pretty much on your staff. His contract is up with Las Vegas. So we'll see what those interviews are like when it comes to some of the other big names. I still feel like that connection with Robert Livingston out of Colorado, he could end up coming back home. That would be obviously a former Cincinnati Bengals staff member on the defensive side. Still feel like that would be exciting. But when you say bigger names, and I know you mentioned Robert, what else are you thinking? You going back to your Dennis Allen? That should be the one, or do you think he's going to be one of the guys that gets the interview?
Yeah, I'm still on Dennis Allen. I think they'll be interested. I think he has a case as the best defensive coordinator on the market, especially when you look at guys with a proven track record. My only difference between him and Saleh is just I feel like, one, Saleh's defense, while very put together, a very good unit, I feel like it is a little bit more exploitable in a way where you know what they're playing, you know the coverages they like to run. It's not that they'll get dominated by any team if they don't have the guys or anything like that. But I think when you look at Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen facing Robert Saleh, I guess I could look at how Josh Allen's done in the past, but I just feel like if they have a good idea over what the defense is going to be running, then I don't think they're going to have a ton of issues. Excuse me. They're going to have a ton of issues beating them in a playoff game where everything matters. Let's see. Josh Allen, 40 points in 1 week this year. That was when Salah was there. The other game, Salah wasn't there. So I feel like a little bit more exploitable. Dennis Allen, his defense a little bit more confusing, a little bit, at least from the outside view, seems a little more confusing, a little bit more multiple, a little bit able to be used in a way that Robert Saleh's defense is. And Saleh plays a lot of that 4-down quarters and cover 3 and doesn't really do too much otherwise blitz wise, where I think that Dennis Allen can do a lot with his blitzes. We watched what Demario Davis and Pete Werner have done in New Orleans the past couple of seasons. So I'm with Allen right now. I think there's other guys you could look at. Matt Eberflus, another recently fired head coach. You could look to like Steve Klinkscale from Los Angeles, their defensive backs coach, Jim Leonard, the pass game coordinator for the Broncos. There's a lot of guys out there right now kind of playing musical chairs. I think I like that they've already got 2 guys interviewed, because you don't want to get in the situation they were in last time they picked a defensive coordinator where you're waiting real late and then you're trying to fill in the rest of the staff too. And a lot of those guys go away. So figure out who you want to be your defensive coordinator after interviewing these guys and let them fill out that defensive line and linebacker coach. That is the one thing about Robert Saleh, is I do feel like he's done a great job developing defensive linemen. I don't know if that's from his defensive line coach and if he could bring him, but that would be ideal. One of the reasons to support him. I'm for all those guys. There's ones I'm not going to be that excited about, but at the end of the day, for a lot of these people, I feel like you get surprised by how defensive coordinators perform. I don't think people were that excited about Dan Quinn when he left the Falcons. I mean, nobody was thinking he was going to be an awesome defensive coordinator, and then he was in Dallas for a couple of years there. And on the other end, Brandon Staley, he did such a good job in LA, and then he does terrible also in LA, but the other team, and then didn't do well with the 49ers either. So I feel like we spend a lot of time talking about this stuff, and then at the end of the day, I don't know if we can really predict who is going to be a great defensive coordinator, because there's just so many factors that go into it.
Yeah, by the time we record again, obviously there's going to be more interview names out there, and the Bengals are just doing what every team would do. You're going to bring all these guys in, see who's best fit when it comes to the plan, what they're looking for. But I did see something from Jay Morrison earlier today about 6 or 7 of the 14 playoff teams had new defensive coordinators going into this year. And I want to say a couple of things about Lou Anarumo. I know, kind of jumping from, hey, Lou Anarumo was fired, to some of the possibilities of defensive coordinator. But we can say, and I know we've talked about it plenty, Lou Anarumo, obviously they're a playoff success when you think about some of the playoff games and what they were able to do. He did see some success in Cincinnati, and obviously can appreciate everything Lou Anarumo did. But sometimes it's okay for both parties to say after 6 years, you know what, it's best to part ways. And the Bengals obviously decided to end that relationship with Lou Anarumo. He'll land on his feet. Who knows? Maybe he'll go back to the New York Giants or somewhere else. But I'm sure he'll be hired soon on the defensive side. Maybe it's a defensive coordinator. Maybe it's another position on defense. Can appreciate what he did here. But I think what I'm seeing is kind of like this overall reaction of, I wouldn't say it's in Cincinnati, but it's Lou Anarumo wasn't the problem. It was the players. And I think we can all agree it was a little bit of both when it comes to playing some of the young guys. Maybe if they would have made those changes sooner, we would have seen a little bit of success when they were on their 3-game losing streak in the middle of the season, when they just needed one of those games. So I think we can point it to a little bit of everything. And sometimes you just need a fresh start when it comes to the development of guys. When you think about the linebacker room, when you think about the defensive line, all of that is extremely important. When you are putting a lot of draft picks and you have a lot of youth on the defensive side of the ball, I think sometimes it's a fresh start. It's a new voice. And maybe that message was getting a little stale on the defensive side. And I'm not saying they have all playmakers over there. Obviously, they're going to have to make some moves in free agency, and maybe they focus first pick in the draft at 17 on a defensive tackle. We'll see where they go. But I I'm fine with it. I think it was it's actually gives a little bit of excitement going into the offseason for a little bit of change when you think about the staff, because you really only get one chance to do blow up most of your staff if you're Zac Taylor.
Yeah, we talk about Zac Taylor being on the hot seat. He definitely is, because he can't just fire anybody else next season and blame it on them and say like, "Hey, let's get some new guys in the building, some fresh voices." I think that is the one thing you point to with that. I think it's exciting to be in the market for a defensive coordinator, just in terms of, can you find somebody that can make the lemonade? I thought Anarumo, that you were alluding to, had some awesome seasons. Thought he had good defenses in 2021, 2022 regular season, then great defenses in both those playoff runs. That he's one of the best game plan defensive coordinators in the league, and I don't want to see him go somewhere in the
Mm-mm.
AFC, to be honest. But on the other end of that, it'll be exciting to have change. Change is always exciting, and you're going to be changing the whole defensive room. So I'm excited to see where this goes. We still have time, but all the best to Anarumo. I have a lot of respect for him, because the NFL coaching world is a lot of nepotism. It's former players, it's children of owners and coaches and players and whatever else out there. And he worked his way up from Long Island high school football to college to Division One to the Power Five to the NFL. And I feel like that is really hard to do. A lot of guys, when you check their Wikipedias, you can read about how they played for some coach, and then that's how they got their start. And I'm not saying they don't deserve that, but I just find it impressive when a coach can grind his way up without having an in to start at the NFL. To start high school football, work his way up is pretty cool.
Yeah, and wish them all the best. Let me ask you this, and again, if there's some rule where this can't happen, which I think it would still be possible, because you see that with other coaches when they get fired as a head coach, they'll join a staff to be like a defensive assistant or specialist. Could you see the Ravens or the Bills saying, "Ooh, Lou, you want to come join us to end this season in the postseason? We have Patrick Mahomes coming right up. Wouldn't mind having you on the staff to end the playoffs, or a possible opportunity there." Could you see that as a possibility?
Yeah, why not?
Mhm.
He's free. He can do what he wants. So I think Vic Fangio did that for the Eagles a few years ago before he got that job, and then he went to Miami. I can see that. I could even see the Chiefs doing it, because he's done very, very well against Josh Allen too. So if I was the Ravens, I'd 100%
Mhm.
call and see what's going on, just because he's done so well against those two, Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. But if I'm any of those teams, I'm probably making the call and just seeing, hey, would you want to be a consultant for this game? And like, what do you think about this game plan we're going to run here? Do you have any ideas about, I don't know, maybe when to send pressure and when to drop out of it and yada yada. So I can see that. He's free, so I
Mhm.
don't see any reason not to.
Yeah, we'll see if that happens. Obviously, wild card weekend is coming right up when it comes to the postseason. Outside of defensive coordinator Mike, do you have any thoughts on offensive line prospects, or coaching prospects, or defensive line and linebacker?
I think the offensive line coach, it's interesting. I think that one's harder to figure out, but I know Dan Rauscher did a good job in New Orleans before he left. A lot of people thought he'd go to Denver with Sean Payton, because he was the offensive line coach for Sean Payton for a while. They didn't go with him. Now he's with Tulane. So I think that throws me off a little bit, but he was pretty well respected around the league, it seemed like. So that's one guy I looked at, went, I'm interested. I do think there's a little bit of a, not too much, but there is a little bit of the scheme issue there. It's just hard to find a guy in the NFL that won't have a little bit of a scheme issue with the Bengals, because the Bengals offense is so unique. So I'm interested in Dan Rauscher. I'm interested if they can coax Mike Munchak into becoming an offensive line coach. I know there's hard feelings there. It's been a decade since he pulled Reggie Nelson's hair. I'm ready to move on,
Mhm.
especially if he's going to turn this offensive line unit into a high functioning unit. Um, I also like Scott Peters. I mean, he was with New England last year. I don't think he was able to turn that unit into anything worthwhile. So, kind of a strike against him, but also that New England unit is abysmal. Uh, I think the Bengals have more talent than that New England
Mhm.
unit. So, I'm a little interested in bringing him in for an interview, but obviously it didn't go that well this season for him. He was a longtime assistant under Bill Callahan. I would interview every assistant to great offensive line coaches out there. Jeff Stoutland has an assistant. I'd interview him. Andy Heck, Aaron Cromer, just any of the guys you can think of that are able to produce quality offensive lines. Go find an assistant. And I'm sure there's plenty of college guys you could talk to and try to see about them coming up to the NFL level, and maybe you have a little bit more success with that because the Bengals play in that spread world. There's probably more spread or offensive line coaches that are used to coaching a spread team down in the college ranks. And the last one would just be no idea if he's interested. I know he likes working with high school kids. Willie Anderson is interesting to me. That is the only one of these former players. Like I see the linebacker coach, people like just named Perfect. This sounds like, has Perfect ever coached? I don't know, but Willie's actually coached. He's coached offensive linemen, taught them a lot. I don't know if he's interested in doing NFL offensive line coaching or if he just likes working with kids, but I'd interview him too, just if he's interested, and see where that stands with him as well. So there's guys out there. There's probably guys out there I can't think of either that are a possibility. But we'll see if they can find somebody that can squeeze a little bit of squeeze the juice, get a little bit of lemonade out of this offensive line unit. Maybe they'll get a little bit more talent. We'll get there with the draft and everything. But yeah, it's a unit that has performed poorly every year of Burrow's career. So let's work on getting them to. They were probably get them to about average, maybe more. I think that's all you really are hoping for right now. So let's see if they can do that.
Yeah, definitely going to have to replace one or both of the guards. So that would be really nice for the offensive line coach to come right into new interior. So we'll see what that looks like. Obviously, a really busy offseason for the Cincinnati Bengals. Plenty of names I'm sure we'll hear. But I agree with you. When you think about the Lou Anarumo, when they did hire him, he was their 7th or 8th choice. So you want to make sure that you're getting this done sooner rather than later. Maybe you have an interest in a coach that's currently in the postseason, but getting as many interviews off as you possibly can. You want to get this right, and you want to do it fast, and then you move on to building your staff, and then obviously what is ahead for them over the next few months while they are currently watching the postseason. But Mike, do you have anything else you would like to say about the Cincinnati Bengals right now?
No, both guards. Replace both guards. That's the only thing I have left to say.
You have
to replace both.
You cannot roll them out and say, you know what, Joe, let's run it back with this interior. Absolutely brutal play from Alex Kappa and Cordell Volson. So we'll see what that looks like. Maybe Kansas City won't sign Trey Smith and he'll be a Cincinnati Bengal and the Bengals will finally value interior, but I don't think that that's going to happen. So we'll see. But make sure you check out Mike's work. McKinley Jackson coming up.
Sick. So that's why I haven't been able to.
Never mind. I'm sorry. I did not mean to. Mike is sick right now, but when he is feeling better, McKinley Jackson is going to be out. Make sure you check it out. Yeah. Hopefully Mike gets to feeling well soon. And we'll have all things Cincinnati Bengals new coaching hires. Pod is down to weekly unless we have breaking news. But appreciate you listening all off season long. Make sure you follow Mike Bengals _Sands. You can follow me at LNDS Patterson. We'll be back next week on It's Always Game Day in Cincinnati.